I, Hyper Brendo, made a grievous error in judgment during our last episode of the Gaming Lovers podcast. I erroneously stated that we would see more of Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice at E3 2019. However, E3 is in June and the release date's in March. So I made a mistake and I apologise sincerely.
Brendo, a question.
Questions from the floor. Yes, you.
How do you expect to make it up to the fans of the Gaming Lovers podcast for your mistake?
Look, it really hurts my feelings that I've put myself out here with an apology. And, all I want is to be accepted for what I have given all my time to this podcast. Occasionally things fall through the cracks, okay? I'm not a data computer brain.
Brendo, why are you talking to yourself in the mirror?
Just practicing something.
The Gaming Lovers Podcast with Brendo and Jem. We're 40, the Gaming Lovers are 40.
I think it's your turn for a written apology for that one. Good day to you all. I was going to say good evening, because it's evening when we're recording.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good night.
It means nothing if you're listening at a different time of day. Good day, or it could be good night. Oh, see, good experience of a 24-hour cycle to you and your loved ones. I am Brendo.
I'm Jem.
And we are the Gaming Lovers here talking about Australian-made games. This week contains the national holiday of Australia. Mm-hmm. Coincidentally called Australia Day.
Imagine that.
Believe it or not. There's a mystery for the time being. We're talking about games that have been developed here in the sunburnt country that we have, the land down under. And there's some surprising ones that even I didn't realise were actually developed in Australia.
I just need to cut you off there. I can't believe you put on a fake Aussie accent to say down under.
Well, it's how I hear it the most in pop culture and other TV shows. So I suppose that's how I am used to hearing it. It's how I should say it.
Yeah. To be fair, most times when we hear people trying to do Aussie accents that can't do the accent, they come out very British.
It's terrible.
It's amusing, but a little sad. Anyways, before we get to the best of Aussie-developed video games, how are your gaming goals going?
Well, I've been full steam ahead in all of my projects this week. I will start with a short story about the forest.
Oh.
Myself and my good buddy the Falcon have been doing a co-op run of the survival PS4 game The Forest. We've been playing multiple hour sessions, far longer than any real gaming session that I've done in months, to be honest. I'm talking 5 hours at a time, and that's a lot of toilet breaks. And on a game where you can't pause and you're always in danger, that is the highest level of danger, doing a quick sneaky wee run. You never know.
How many toilet breaks do you need in 5 hours?
They say you should stay hydrated in the summer months, and I am, well, hydrated. We'll just leave it there. That's not the story. That's not the story I was planning on sharing. Imagine for a second your favourite band is going to be having a concert and you're like, yes, I'm going to go to that. You book it in, you plan with your friends. It's a long trip to get there, so you make sure you've got all your goodies you need for the road trip. You make sure you got the right clothes on. You then journey for hours at a time. You get to the destination and realise nobody bought a ticket, so you can't get in and it's sold out and you have to go home. That's basically what our experience was in the forest. The middle of the island has a gigantic sinkhole. We wanted to explore the bottom of it. And so we spent 3.5 hours in the complex cave network on this island. Finally worked our way to the very bottom, only to find out we were missing a key item to progress any further. Now that'll suck the air out of the room.
Yeah.
So then we realised we then had to make our way up out of the sinkhole to go looking for said key item, which was about another 1.5 hours of a journey. So that was our entire last session. It felt very anticlimactic. Going all that way. We're playing as blind as we possibly can, so we don't know where the item is. I'm not being specific because it's the sort of thing that I would not like ruined for myself, and therefore I will not ruin anyone else's experience either. But I think we have a game plan in mind for our next session. We are having a lot of fun, and we feel far more confident in combat than we used to as well. When we first started this game, the basic cannibal caused us no shortage of trouble. And then since then, there's been bigger baddies coming
As there
to
always are.
ruin our day. And we had trouble with those, but then we could confidently deal with them. And then bigger baddies showed up yet again, and then we were scared of them. Now we are feeling very confident in our skills. We're still deathless on this run.
Nice.
Canonically deathless. I'll put that asterisk there.
Except for your chainsaw fight.
There was the chainsaw fight. There may have also been another moment immediately after we saved to finish one of our sessions that we tried to just explore one last bit of cave. I forgot to change the oxygen tank on my rebreather and drowned. So that didn't actually happen though. We reloaded and all is right with the world.
If only we had that in real life.
Having a lot of fun with that game though. Having a lot of fun.
Good.
The other things I have been playing, Hitman 2, I am head over heels in love with that game, as I knew that I would be, as you knew that I would be, because you've seen me in giddy excitement over the past week over some mischievous murder plans.
Yes, you always seem to get very sucked into Hitman. And I know that you had finished like all the different campaigns, even when you get busted by people, you keep going for your first playthrough anyways.
Yep. My first run through any new Hitman level, I take it as slow and steady as I can. I listen to everyone's conversations. I try and just formulate a plan, push those boundaries. Can I get in here? No, it's trespassing. Oh, well, I'll get the right outfit. It'll be fine. No reloading of saves on my first go through, and just get the mission complete no matter what. So if things go smooth and quiet, excellent. Silent Assassin rating, fantastic. First go. Nice work, Brendo. Doesn't always go that way. Occasionally there's some collateral damage, we will say. Perhaps some innocent guards may walk into me stripping a man of his clothes and trying to wear them myself. And then, because I have no other non-lethal weaponry, I just got to kill them and just by whatever means necessary, the mission will be complete. Makes me sound like such a sinister man, doesn't it?
Well, you're playing a game as a hitman, so you tend to be quite ruthless in those scenarios.
The thing is, I don't feel bad about eliminating my targets because they are villainous and scumbags a lot of the time. So that eases my conscience. But when an innocent guard walks in who's just here for a paycheck, I feel a little bad about throwing a pair of scissors in his eyes.
Well, you never know. He could have been villainous in his own way that you just don't know about. Or he could have been a really sweet guy that you just completely destroyed him and his family's life and left his kids without a dad. And his wife now is going to have to work multiple jobs to make ends meet. And you ruined their lives. How dare you?
Well, I'm going to give a little break on Hitman. I'm not going to play that for a little while now because you've hurt my feelings.
You consider the consequences of what you've done. I remember, that reminds me of a topic I saw online. I can't remember where. Possibly Reddit. People talking about how NPCs would react to your character coming in, like their thoughts, if suddenly the hero of a game comes in and starts rummaging through your house, takes all your stuff and leaves.
I'd let them.
Well, you know, that does happen to people in real life when people come and break and steal stuff. But, like, you know, you think of some of the ridiculous things that you do in video games that you would never do in real life, and you wonder how the characters or, like, the NPCs would react if they ever would, because sometimes they just kind of sit there and they look at you but they don't do anything. And so people in the comments were like writing all these reactions and things like that of things that they saw. One of my favorites, I think, because I'd been playing Assassin's Creed recently, was like the description of a guard's thoughts. It was like, where did my buddy go? He was supposed to swap shifts with me. We're supposed to rotate. Hang on. That's the captain's body. How did that happen? What's going on?
Why are all these swords and shields on the ground mysteriously?
Why are the war supplies on fire? And then, you know, it suddenly cut off. So that reminded me of that. Just
Just these poor NPCs trying to live their life, and I'm there knocking them out to take their clothes so I can disguise myself as a food salesman and then poison a man's food right in front of him. And it's not suspicious because you're wearing a chef's hat. You can poison whatever you like.
Fugu, anyone?
Wonderful. Love a good fugu. So Hitman I've had a lot of fun with. I have completed in this short span of 1 week every mission that comes in the base game of Hitman 2. However, the joy of Hitman is not just playing it once and moving on. You do it more, you unlock more mini challenges, which increases your level mastery, and the higher that goes, the more options for infiltration you have, the more stash locations you have for when you want to smuggle in an old sniper rifle, and also more costumes and, most importantly, new weaponry that you can start any mission with, including explosive rubber ducks. What more could you ask for?
Bit of Sean Bean, maybe?
Sean Bean, comically enough, the undying in Hitman 2. A little bit of a pop culture reference since Sean Bean seems to always die.
In everything.
And he's a character in Hitman 2 for one of the elusive targets that unfortunately I didn't get to do because they're a limited time only. However, they do explain that he has a habit of appearing to be dead and then he's back again before you know it. And that just made us both laugh. That was good fun.
Yeah, I love it when a game can get a bit meta with you. You know, I do think some series can't get away with it, but others can do it so well and with aplomb. And I think that is a good example of being able to take a pop culture thing and still make it relevant to the story, and it feels organic and not forced. So I liked seeing that, and especially the trailer that comes with it too is pretty funny. So even if you don't play Hitman, but if you're a fan of Sean Bean, I recommend just checking that out on YouTube.
The trailer, very funny stuff.
Very funny.
The other gaming hours that I've allocated as I'm trying to wrap up everything before February, because a little thing coming up on next week's episode, 4 in Feb discussion.
Yes.
I'm looking forward to that. I always get excited for this time of year, but I've been playing Yakuza 0 in my futile attempts to beat that game before February rolls around. You have, how should I say it nicely, teased me a little bit about my affection for a certain real estate minigame, investing money in properties and then upgrading them and then waiting for the timers to tick around so I can then take the money back out, so on and so forth. I've finally decided to move on from that and get moving with the main story. What's that over there? The side quests to be done. I'll be over here with the side quests. I have to do disco dancing, madam. Excuse me, there's important things to be done.
I would love to see you disco dance in real life.
Don't trust me.
I would love to see you with a fro. With the comb stuck in the side as well. And flares with platform shoes. Can I dress you up, please? Like, that would be really fun.
Well, what would you rather me study? The Persona dancing games moves or Kazuma Kiryu on the dance floor
it could
in
be
the
both.
80s?
You could do both.
Well, you can because
Disco's not dead.
There are actually Yakuza outfits available as DLC for the Persona characters, so it all crosses over nicely. Yakuza 0, I do want to focus on the main missions. I just there's just side quests that I enjoy doing, and there's some weird stuff. There's a little bit of creepy stuff. There's a little bit of sexy stuff. But overall, it's quite funny, all that extra content. But I think I'm ready to get back to the main story. So hopefully I'll talk more about that at the tail end of this episode. And before we move on, we mentioned a little bit of 4 in Feb. I might need everyone's help. If you're listening to this as this episode drops or relatively close to it, on our social media, our Facebook page, and also my personal Twitter, which is @HyperBrendo, I'm trying to decide which Super Nintendo game will be entered into my 4 in Feb qualifications. We have the choice of Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Super Metroid, Super Mario RPG, and Secret of Mana, a game which I had an interest in, and then that interest skyrocketed when Troy Baker and Nolan North played it. And
Retro replay.
The Birth of a Noose.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, if you want to help put a vote on that, like we said, the Gaming Lovers on Facebook, or on Twitter at HyperBrendo.
Mm-hmm.
Cast your vote, because I've not played any of those. I missed the Super Nintendo era growing up. I had Sega consoles until the Nintendo 64 rolled around. So I want to experience one of these games. I need your help to decide which one. So please, if you're hearing this, help a brother out. Now that that's out of the way, what do you have on your gaming goals of the past? Of the past. What have you
What
been
have
playing?
I played in the past? So many things, but as far as the last week, not much. I've mostly been playing Mass Effect and continuing that playthrough. It's kind of New Game Plus, I guess, because I basically reloaded an old version, and am trying to get the achievement for hitting, I think, level 60, which means you have to start at level 50 pretty much in order to kind of hit it.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. You can go through the whole game from a blank slate, make it to level 52 or something, and then on the second playthrough,
Takes
that
so much
last
longer.
8 levels, you may not even get it on the
Yeah.
entire run.
So you got to do a lot of side missions and like a lot of experience farming and stuff, which I don't mind though. I'm a lot more confident, especially with the first one, which I think I struggled with in early days when I first played it. It being my first kind of proper shooter, I guess, since Bond, since GoldenEye on 64.
And although you had dabbled in the RPG genre with Knights of the Old Republic and games like that, it
And
was your
Dragon Age,
first
yeah.
pretty much real-time combat
Yeah.
RPG.
Mm-hmm.
So
Panic stations. Oh my goodness, I drove you bonkers because I would always use the power wheel to pause and like breathe so I wouldn't like have panic attacks because I was just like, I'm overwhelmed. Oh my goodness.
So it just meant that every time she was trying to get through a moment in the game, I would hear that power wheel sound every 4 seconds.
And now I'm so overpowered, I can send like Rex and Garrus forward and they'll take care of like all these enemies and I can just sit there and be like, you're doing all the work. This is amazing.
You're like a space general.
Yep. So I've been playing that and...
Spoiler free, roughly how far into that game are you on this playthrough?
I've collected the entire team, like, of party members, so I think that helps. I'm partway through the next big story section. Like, you've got 3 planets you can choose from the get-go of where you're gonna go next after the Citadel. And I'm halfway through the second one of those 3.
Nifty.
So I'll leave it at that. But yeah, I've been doing a lot of reading, actually, recently.
Oh, a bit of reading, she says.
I finished a trilogy in the span of how many days? So, and they were not small books, but I did not want to put them down. So in Mass Effect, I think I maybe played once or twice this week, and the rest was just me reading. So I haven't actually played that much. I do want to keep playing Mass Effect, though, before February starts, so I can at least finish the first game, so that way I'm not leaving it. I mean, it doesn't matter if I leave it hanging. That was the point. That's why I said I was playing those games. So if I do leave it hanging, then it's no biggie. But
Not a problem.
yeah. So I'm still struggling to think of what games I want to include for 4 in Feb, but we'll cover that a little later because I think I'll need help like you from people giving me suggestions. I would like to do something different, but I can't think of what. Nothing, like I'm just kind of drawing blanks. So... But we will touch on that at the end of this episode.
We'll touch primarily on that next episode.
Well, that will be our confirmed picks, though. So
right.
if I need help, then I will talk about that at the end of this episode 40 of The Gaming Lovers, after this. Share the love. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/The Gaming Lovers. Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!
Oi, oi, oi!
Aussie, Aussie, Aussie!
Oi! Shut up!
How dare you? You may have heard that chant at sporting events if you've watched anything with Aussie competitors, whether it be at the Olympics or the World Cup or even wrestling. When there's an Aussie wrestler, inevitably Aussies or those who are at least familiar with the chant will start cheering Aussie, Aussie, Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi.
Yep.
3 Aussies, 3 ois. 3 Aussies, 3 ois.
And then an Aussie,
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 oi. Aussie, oi. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi.
Aussie.
3, 3, 3, 3,
So
1,
poorly
1, 1,
explained.
1, 3, 3.
Okay.
You have to get it right.
I think your explanation probably confused people even more, but okay.
3, 2, 3, 3, 1, 1, 1, 3, 3. It's not that hard.
Let's stop talking in binary and actually
Well,
get...
there's actually no 3s in binary. There's only 1s and 0s.
With Australia Day this week here on the Gaming Lovers podcast, we wanted to look at some of the best Aussie-developed video games thus far.
Mm-hmm.
So, in no particular order, but you might be surprised by what games have come out of Australia. And I think I was when we were doing digging. I knew some, but I didn't realise all of the ones that were on here. I'm like, wow, I'm kind of proud.
Growing up, I've been a long-term gamer since I was a kid. And back in the 90s, Australia almost felt like just a nothing... just perception of a child, mind you, like a nothing entertainment-wise country. I mean, everything that you heard, Japan, Nintendo Japan, Sega of America, even when the PlayStation rolled around, because we're in the PAL region, it was always Sony Entertainment Europe. Sony Computer Entertainment Europe presents. Europe, America, Japan, that was it. Your TV shows primarily came from Europe, America, maybe not Japan, but Pokemon rolled around, so it got there
Dragon
eventually.
Ball.
But Australia, we had, you could see it on the TV. Our TV shows were much lower budget. Entertainment always felt like it was coming from elsewhere. So the concept of having video games made in Australia felt like a foreign concept. Foreign, not just because of, it was not meant to be a country pun there, but it made sense.
But we're actually... have been involved in a lot of things more than we realise, I think. It's you do a bit of digging and you realise that Australians have been involved in entertainment on a far larger scope than we realise. Like the amount of movies that are shot in Australia, because we've got some great locations and we've got such a diverse land to work with as far as having locales to film. You constantly see in credits for things like Marvel movies. The amount of times I see, this done in Melbourne, this done in Queensland, and I'm like, what?
When was this? Why wasn't I invited?
How did we not know they were filming? I would have tried to look. But still, Australians as well, one of my favourite factoids is knowing that one of the first ever films, like feature-length movie with a narrative, was about Ned Kelly, who is like a famous... highwayman robber, basically, in Australia.
Bushranger.
So it's kind of cool to know that little factoids like that. So digging up all this stuff about video games has made me go, wow, I think we are involved. I'm just completely ignorant of how involved we've been in certain aspects. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So let's have a look at some of the best video games that Aussies have had a hand in making.
Now, you and I are no stranger to the Borderlands series.
Mm-hmm.
We've both enjoyed the Telltale's Borderlands, which was basically our introduction to the entire series.
Yes, it was.
We co-opted the entirety of the first game. We co-opted about half of the second game before something shiny distracted us. It's what happens to us sometimes.
Yes, it does.
But then also, after the sequel of Borderlands, there was a pre-sequel, which is a strange thing. But Borderlands, the pre-sequel... developed in Australia.
Aussie.
And if you have played it, you may have noticed there's actually quite a few Australian accents included in that moon land. I don't know why there's Aussie accents in space.
Well, to be fair, if humanity is up there, it's not usually just one country, which is one of those things that, no offense, but it kind of irks me when there's things where it's like supposed to be representing like humanity on a global level and it's all one nationality voices. Like that bugs me so much. Which is why I do love video games that make sure that they've got a really diverse cast as far as that goes. But we'll leave that aside for now. We're not here to criticize. We're here to talk about Aussie games. So that was one that surprised me, was Borderlands the pre-sequel. Another one that caught my attention was De Blob.
Oh, I love De Blob. De Blob was one of the games that I had probably one of the best times ever on my Nintendo Wii was with D-Blob. I mean, that game on a artistic and musical sense
So fun.
was so good. Basically, you are a paint blob.
Yep.
And you have different coloured paint blobs, all of your friends. And then, oh no, monochromatic things from the Inked Corporation make everything black and white, and there's no more fun in life.
Sucking the colour out of the world. You know, it was the splashy paint fun before Splatoon was around.
It really is. And because you are a rebellious paint blob and you want to colour everything, depending on what paint you touch, you absorb that colour, and then whatever you touch becomes that colour, whether it's a building or a tree or a park bench or a lamppost.
Yep.
Now, what is awesome about the soundtrack of D-Blob is that each colour represents a different instrument that
Yes,
is
it does.
added layer by layer to the soundtrack. If you are red, it might be a trumpet, for example. And if that's the first thing you've added into level, the whole soundtrack will just be the occasional little trumpet sound. And then you change colour and you become something else, and another instrument gets layered into the music. I love layered music. It's one of my simplest pleasures in life, but it always makes me smile. And D-Blob was a great time. The sequel was a great time and developed in Australia. That's one I did actually know, but no one love.
A more recent one that I think got mentioned quite early on our podcast, not by us, but by some teenage friends that we had playing some retro games, and they kept comparing Frogger to Crossy Road. And we're like, what is this Crossy Road and why is it besmirching the good name of Frogger?
The good name of Frogger. The noble Frogger. Had you actually played Frogger back in the day?
Not back in the day. I'd played it back when I worked at the radio station. They had this arcade system which had like about 8 different games built into it. It's like a table where you sit down on either side and the TV screen's kind of in the center. So I can't remember the name of what that system's called, but that had Frogger on it. And that was actually the first time I played it.
It was probably the knockoff 4000.
Possibly. But that was a lot of fun. And I probably played that one the most out of all the ones on that system because I just love the premise of it. It was a simple game, but it was addictive as well. Like you'd kind of get a roll going and then die and you'd be like, no, I could do this again. And Crossy Road is basically the same premise, just obviously different skins, and you've got a chicken who is crossing the road.
So it does make more sense than a frog. I mean, there's no joke about why did the frog cross the road.
True.
And the answer is to get to the river, and then why did it cross the river? To get into the little nest thing. Do frogs have nests? It doesn't matter. This is not a biology podcast. This is not animals. But this is one of those generational things where I say, Flinders Street Station in Melbourne is where I do a lot of my work, where I start and finish a lot of my train runs. And if there's some event going on, there's people everywhere, I'll say to the driver next to me, oh, this is like cutting through in Frogger, isn't it? And if they're beneath 30, they'll usually say, what's Frogger? Do you mean Crossy Road? And I'm like, oh, am I the old one here? When did this happen? I knew it was bound to happen eventually. I just didn't hope it would happen yet.
It's happened a lot faster than you think.
Crossy Road had like 1 billion, maybe not 1 billion, but a lot of downloads and very popular, basically an endless Frogger and Australian made.
One that we've talked about as a fun party game, or at least a co-op game that we've thoroughly enjoyed, and one that's quite challenging actually, is Death Squared.
No shortage of enjoyment, frustration, and very close to murdering cooperative partners in real life. Death Squared really does bring out the best and the worst of human cooperation.
And the snarky humour, it is kind of nice to know that that's probably, the reason we love it so much is because it's Aussie. Even though the voices are American, the humour, I think, transcends culturally quite well.
Yep.
So
This is one of those games
things, yeah.
I didn't actually realise this one was Australian. That's the thing with indies is that they don't have the big brand like Capcom. You know where Capcom is. You know where Nintendo is. You know where these big titles are based. These big companies. But when you've got little things like SMG Studio, okay, they made the game, cool. I have no idea where they're based. Oh, it's, Australia. How fascinating.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the benefit of indie developers too, is that they have so much freedom in this day and age to be able to do the bulk of the work themselves, but they can outsource things online. You know, technology has come to a great point now where and that's a big part of my job too, is being able to have some pretty great technology at home. Even 10 years ago, I probably wouldn't have been able to have the setup that I do and be able to work on the level that I do without it. So, we shouldn't be so surprised that a lot of indie games are flourishing so well and have such high quality. We've kind of hit this wonderful technological golden era, I would say, where so many people know what they're using and are making it work to their advantage. Yeah. So, yeah. It's kind of cool. Like all these games that we've raved about in previous podcasts, and when we do some digging, we're like, oh, well, it's Aussie made. I love it even more. So a little bit of nationality pride.
Well, there was another one of those party games that we did actually know was Australian made because it got around to us from a friend who overheard their friends talking about it at work. And he's like, I know that game. Are you talking about Push Me, Pull You?
Yes. Oh my goodness. Crazy weirdness. We do that well, I think.
We can, yes. Basically, we've mentioned this game multiple times on this podcast because we can't get away from it. Just like you can't get away from your cooperative partner in this game because you are two ends of a giant intestine turd.
Accordion.
Yeah. Perfect. An intestine turd accordion. That is 100% accurate.
Ugh.
It's a game where you're trying to basically wrestle a ball into your goal, and then you've got another giant intestinal turd worm creature, centipede man, also trying to stop you from doing that, and it's disgusting, and it has laughs. Probably more of a short-term, what the heck is this game? You'll play it for like 20 minutes and then move on. But, man, the laugh that has burst out of people's mouths when they first lay eyes on Push Me, Pull You, it's almost unrivaled.
It is a great party game, one that is easy for anyone to kind of pick up and play, which is another benefit as well. And it's entertaining for those that are spectators, which is a big, I think, plus for anything that's considered a party game. You will have people giggling along even if they're not participating. So, Push Me, Pull You, another Aussie video game.
Yep, an indie game made in Melbourne. And that is exactly how it should be pronounced.
Melbourne.
Not Melbourne, not even Melbourne, but just Melbourne.
I like to tell American friends, say Mel and bin. Melbourne. Kind of like mush them together. Yeah.
Melbourne.
Not Melbourne. Melbourne.
Melbourne. That doesn't even sound right to me, and I've been saying it for 30 years. Melbourne.
Oh, dear.
It's just Melbn.
All right.
Melbourne.
What's another Aussie video game? We're looking at the top ones, remember, not just mentioning any. I mean, there are a lot of like AFL games and cricket games and stuff. We're not talking about those because no offense to people who do love their sporting games. There are better games out there.
Well, if you want to talk about top games, even in the most recent time frame, one of the top games available on the market at the moment is something that I am clamoring to play. Most likely, I will put my integrity on the line right now and say at some point this year I will play this game, and that wonderful looking game is Hollow Knight. Ooh. A Metroidvania that is scoring 10 out of 10s.
Ooh, nice.
Worldwide.
Yeah, Aussie. Sorry, I'm just going to keep saying that. No.
You just sound like an obnoxious Aussie. Now, another thing that's awesome about gaming in this ecosystem that we live in is that games can be funded or even partially funded by Kickstarters or crowdfunding, and that's what happened with Hollow Knight. $57,000 of its funding was raised in a Kickstarter.
That's pretty awesome. I love that idea, of the ownership that you can have in supporting a game like that and helping those who don't have the seed money that they would otherwise need to get a project off the ground.
Yeah, that's the thing. These things aren't cheap to develop, and if you have a great idea, sometimes you can just not be able to put it into action on a financial level. But if you have a good enough idea and pitch it well enough, people will chip in.
Yeah. And it's nice to see people supporting good projects and people that want to do the work, as opposed to some of the things that are on Kickstarter and stuff that are basically people just asking for money for their holidays. It's psh, get lost.
It is available now on the Switch, which would make it absolutely perfect for playing on the road. I love a good Metroidvania game where you get abilities to reach things that you couldn't reach earlier in the game. So even places that you've been previously now feel more open, and yeah, it's just exciting. I love it. It also won the Australian Game Awards Independent Game of the Year and the Australian Developed Game of the Year 2018.
Nice.
And got nominated worldwide from the Golden Joystick Awards to the British Academy Game Awards. For the best debut game. Got nominated, didn't win, sadly.
Hey, it's an honour to be nominated.
Game Developers Choice Award, they got a nomination for Team Cherry for their best debut game. It's incredible. Best single-player game at the South by Southwest Gamers Voice Awards for the Gamer's Voice single-player award. So there you go.
Nice.
Nominated all around the board in 2017, 2018. And, yeah, good on you, Team Cherry. I'm proud of you. Nice work. Another one of those games that surprised me when I'm like, everyone is talking about Hollow Knight. And it's Aussie-made. I didn't realise this.
One Aussie-made game that's actually quite famous, but you might not have realised was Aussie-made, one that we always love to mention to people when we're like trying to mention things that have been made. I believe it was primarily developed in Sydney. L.A. Noire.
L.A. Noire.
Pretty sure most people have heard of that one.
L.A. Noire came out PS3 era and has, I don't even know if it's been rivaled yet as far as its facial animations go. That game blew me away just with the complexity of the facial capture that they had used in development. Many hours of work put into that.
Yeah.
As far as just a cast of actors with just their little tiny muscles that weren't ever accurately replicated in a video game before until I saw that. And like I said, I don't think there's been much that has come close.
Detroit Become Human, I think, is the most recent example I can think of that comes close to that.
They're not even humans, though. Just being silly.
But yes, it was groundbreaking. It was one of those games, I think it was a little polarizing, but those style games tend to be anyway. So I love a good narrative and I love a good mystery as well, so that ticked a few boxes for me.
Now, this is where things get complicated because if you say who developed L.A. Noire, people will say, oh, that's a Rockstar game. The thing is, Rockstar published L.A. Noire, but they did not develop it. That honour goes to Team Bondi, a game company that sadly went bankrupt and is no longer around, and there was a bit of controversy that emerged about their long work hours and schedules, but...
I think that's pretty much every developer, unfortunately, in this day and age.
But
it's a thing that needs to change across the board, but that is also a reality of the current and previous, I think, work situation.
I just wanted to make sure that Team Bondi got their praise that they deserve, because in this situation, Rockstar Games, I mean, boy, howdy. And that was just me using my cowboy terminology, because they have made Red Dead Redemption, they have made Grand Theft Auto, they have made a table tennis ping pong game that was fantastic on the Xbox 360. Do not laugh, it was great. But they only published L.A. Noire, but everyone thinks that Rockstar made it. So it's just one thing. Always check who developed the game and who published it, because you never know where the credit is due.
Exactly. Things like Atlas is key, because we love Atlas, but they don't always make the games, but they do publish a lot of games under their banner.
I believe that Sega actually publishes Atlas games in Australia at the moment. So even when you think it's a Sega game, it might be Atlas.
Yeah,
and
that's why there's so
confused.
many credits at the start. It's like you thought this person made it, but then this one made it, and then this one did the translations, and this one did this. It's like, who did this game?
I really enjoyed L.A. Noir's narrative. It did go through various ebbs and flows as far as what you expected was going to happen. And plot twists here and there. Very cool. You go through different departments of a police role. Sometimes you're working in the arson department, sometimes in the vice, sometimes investigating homicide. And then somehow, would you believe it, it all ties together in one big narrative.
Imagine that.
Also, shocked myself and a few others because it had full frontal naked victim corpses, which was not expected.
Well, I mean, policemen see horrible things all the time. And frankly, no one should find all that attractive or appealing since they're dead.
No,
And if they do, then...
I never said it was exciting to see. I just said it was surprising. Not something you see often. Well, this has gotten...
Let's go back. Okay, next on the list of Aussie-developed video games. One game I'm pretty sure you've heard of, even if you've never played it. Fruit Ninja. One of the most famous mobile games ever. And those guys, boy howdy, are they rich after making that simple mobile game.
Now, I joked earlier and threw a bit of exaggeration out there when I said billions of downloads. Well, it's not really an exaggeration with Fruit Ninja. If you can believe it, even as far back as 2015, they hit 1 billion downloads of Fruit Ninja. It's a game that is easy to pick up and play. It's super very casual, friendly for whatever generation of gamer that you are. And kids love it. Old people love it. And most importantly, ninjas who eat fruit. Probably that's the target demographic that they're aiming for there, wouldn't you say?
It's had plenty of spin-offs as well, not just in video games, but as far as spoofs and TV shows and all sorts of things. You know you've hit the jackpot when you've got memes as well as merchandise being made from a simple video game. I mean, I'm super jealous that, I couldn't think of an idea like that back, obviously it would take a lot more these days to break through to get, I guess, noteworthy on the mobile gaming site these days. But back then, at the beginning, I think, of the App Store, if you'd gotten on board early, guaranteed people would have made a lot of money if they'd jumped on board early.
Super simple idea. Touchscreens were new and novelty was there. And all you had to do was swipe a finger and you sliced the fruit. And you knew you'd made it when you got YouTube videos of people using actual samurai swords and having watermelons thrown at them so that they can slice them and be a real fruit ninja.
Yep, in slow-mo and all its glory. It is quite fun to watch, actually, though. It's pretty messy, but fun. Messy fun.
What a popular game that was. A game that was also very popular on mobiles this past year, especially when we were talking about mobile games of 2018, Florence.
And not Florence in the Machine.
No, Florence in the machine. in your handheld video game phone machines.
For those who've never played it, Florence is basically like a puzzle mini game, but with a romance story that ties in. And it's one that you can complete in half an hour, but it still has replay value with obviously the little mini games and such that are inside it. But the reason it gets attention is because of the story, which, as you know, we love a good story.
Indeed we do, even if it is only 30 minutes long.
Hey, they don't have to be long. Sometimes short stories can be just as impactful. Look at the first 5 minutes of Up.
Easily digestible.
Exactly.
That is not easily digestible. That still haunts me. Are you interested in Florence? Maybe if the sale is right, you
Maybe.
cannot pick that as one of your 4 in Feb.
Why
because
not?
It's 40 minutes long, for goodness sake.
With that's not like those are always estimates. Those times to be. They might take longer. I might really suck at the puzzles. But hey, what if I want to choose a really long game? Can then I choose Florence as like a short game?
Well, how long's the long game?
Well, maybe like 100 hours.
We're getting off topic here. 100 hours. Could you even do that in a month?
Yes.
Well, this is you we're talking about.
You've
The
seen
binge specialist.
You've seen me finish 3 huge novels in the span of like 4 or 5 days. I can totally finish a big game if I'm motivated enough. So, but I just need to know that I have a counterpart where I can tick something off because that gets the ball rolling for me, knowing that I've finished something. But anyway, let's talk about 4 in Feb at the end of the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Florence is another Australian-made game with a very sweet story and just lots of puzzles, basically.
Nothing wrong with that.
Mm-hmm.
Professor Layton made his living on puzzles. And I love that. Now, another game that has caught my eye with its retro-style artwork and its interesting idea is Golf Story.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Golf Story is basically, you would think there'd be nothing more than golf involved in Golf Story, but there's actually a story.
Mm.
The hint was there.
It is actually got some RPG elements snuck into what is a golf game with some snarky humor thrown in as well. Basically, everyone insulting you, every NPC that you speak to hates you. So I do love, though, that you can see hints of, I guess, Australian vernacular kind of sneaking in, or just at least our slang, with people calling you Dal. Hey, Dal. Short for darling. In case you were wondering. It's not obvious.
It could be Darla.
Sometimes certain things aren't obvious. So that's one thing that I love seeing. Not that it's just Australian made, but that it's got some very subtle Australian culture thrown in, but not like over the top, not,
It's there if you know what you're looking for.
Yeah.
Looking. Can't help but throw slang around now. Just lazy Australian language.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Golf Story is another game that came out fairly recently. It is doing well on every console that it's been released on.
Mm-hmm.
And surprisingly, Australian made. Maybe not surprisingly if you expected it to be on this list, because so far it's talking about Australian games. So
yes.
Depends on what you were expecting.
But it has been getting good reviews. You've got your typical golf challenges, which play pretty much like every other golf game with powering up and waiting for the right timed presses. But there's also fetch quests and other things that you do as well as part of the RPG elements of the game. So it kind of keeps things moving. You don't feel like all you're doing is golf.
Yep.
At the same time, you're not just doing fetch quests or other stuff too. So it's a balance of both. So that has been why I think it's been so well received across the board, is that it's a good blend of both.
Yeah. You don't have to necessarily love golf games to enjoy Golf Story.
Mm-hmm.
It has witty writing, good fun, challenging gameplay.
Cutesy pixelated art.
Tell you what, that's very popular these days, isn't it? Everything seems to have.
But it also
art.
helps for indie developers. I think it's a lot easier for them to do that, graphically speaking, than it is for them to try to match, the quality of a lot of 3D games these days.
Mm-hmm.
So it would make sense, and that would be probably a direction I would lean towards if I was ever trying to attempt to make a video game myself. I'd go with that.
It is easier than learning complex 3D modelling and animation and everything like that.
Exactly. So, Golf Story, another top Australian game on our list.
And now, in my opinion, the tippy top of this list would have to be a game developed by 2K Australia.
Mm-hmm.
Irrational Games, BioShock.
BioShock and BioShock 2.
Very cool that a game that got so much mainstream attention, so much success commercially, and really is one of the defining franchises of the last generation, BioShock was Australian made. And that, again, to the young preteen brain of Brendo, it doesn't seem like it should be right.
But it is. It's kind of cool. It's one of the games that shocked me when we were putting together this list. I really didn't know this until the past few days as we were getting this podcast ready, which makes me feel a little bit bad that I haven't put that much research into some of these games that we've played. I just enjoyed them and never knew where they were coming from. I probably know more about Japanese games than I do Australian games, which makes me feel bad. But BioShock and BioShock 2, I think, have inspired not just other games, but they have a big cult following as far as fans go.
Mm-hmm.
I love seeing the cosplays that come from that game.
It's super cool.
And they've got such an interesting characters and NPCs in those games. Like, it's no surprise that people gravitate towards recreating them.
Yeah, BioShock was originally created as a spiritual successor to a game series called System Shock, which was one of the first to integrate first-person shooter elements alongside RPG elements. You still move and shoot in first person, but you have powers, you have stats that you level up, and skills. Basically everything that I love in games, from Prey to Deus Ex, all those sort of franchises all carry that same sort of gameplay, but System Shock is where it really originated. And then to have the brains behind that to move on to a new franchise that plays similarly but with whole new ideas. I'm a big fan of spiritual sequels. I mean, GoldenEye to Perfect Dark, one of my favourite combos from the Nintendo 64 era. So moving on from a franchise that I did actually know about, System Shock. I have System Shock 2 on my laptop as we speak. It actually scared the crud out of me the first time I played it, which really wasn't that long ago. But I always saw it in magazines. It looked interesting and cool. And then when BioShock came out, I actually expected it to be more of a horror game. So being in my wheelhouse at the time, I dove straight into it. And although I would not say it's explicitly a horror game, it still has enough scary moments that it made me occasionally want to just save and quit for now, and I'll come back to it next time.
Let myself calm down, get my heart rate back to normal. I have moments like that with Fallout where it feels like a legit horror game and not just, this open world that you're exploring. And that's one of the reasons that I have actually been afraid to try BioShock. That and first-person games do make me feel nauseous, so I don't play them as much. But it makes me want to play it more now, knowing that it was Aussie made. I feel like I need to. I feel like I'm doing a disservice to my countrymen.
I adored BioShock. The first time I played through that game, it was an experience. Start to finish. You start off in a plane crash. You're in an ocean, which looked incredible in that generation of graphics. You find a lighthouse, you go into a little submersible, and suddenly you're in an underwater city floating through the buildings, and you're like, what on earth is this? It's a world where anything goes. There are no rules. We can develop whatever we need to develop. Art, science, medicine, whatever. There are no limits. You can guarantee you know how well that turned out for humanity down there. Not that well. Some of the characters you meet are very strange and quite iconic, as far as Sander Cohen and his art exhibit. Wouldn't that be interesting to visit, don't you think? A simple art exhibit under the sea. Under the sea.
Under the sea.
Under the sea. But the combination of the powers, the art style, which had almost like the neon Vegas lights, but in an underwater city. You've got Welcome to the Circus of Value, where you exchange your money for new skills and things like that. Super cool. I love it. I would recommend that you do enjoy it one day, but the intro may set you up to be more scared than you really have to be. But it had great storylines. It had a great plot twist in that first one. Woo, didn't see that coming. That was pretty crazy. And overall, a great time.
Now, BioShock 1 and BioShock 2 and Minerva's Den were all developed in Australia. BioShock Infinite, however, not developed in Australia. So just thought we should clarify that just in case people figured they heard BioShock and thought all of them were. Not all, but it started in Australia. So that's where the legacy began.
Well, because we're down under, and if the world is flat, then you'd think that under would just be water, which is why they had the underwater levels developed in Australia. We know what we're talking about down here.
Yes, that makes perfect sense.
I'm just trying to explain it.
Well, I guess if you think of lawlessness as well, most people think of us as just a country full of convicts, right? So...
Well, just to clarify, BioShock Infinite not completely developed in Australia. They still helped here and there.
Well, there you go.
The Canberra-based studio did help with the creation of the city, but it wasn't majoritively developed in Australia. So we couldn't include that by its very definition of Australian pride. It is a confusing thing because the Canberra-based studio was originally called Irrational Games before it became 2K Australia, before it became 2K Marin, and then it became 2K Australia again. So it's kind of hard to know which development team made which bits of the game because there's that many names and I'm confused.
Fair enough. Interestingly enough, though, the games like Mad Max, not developed in Australia. You think they would be? I remember there being petitions, fans getting very angry with the more recent Mad Max game that was being worked on. And the trailer showed an American, I think, voice, and fans put together a petition saying, Mad Max is Australian. Where's the Aussie protagonist? What are you doing to Mad Max? And I think they had to recast. I kind of feel bad for whoever the main voice actor was losing his job over that. But at the same time, you don't mess with something that's iconic like that, too.
Well, you were making me feel bad about the NPCs I was eliminating and their families and the effect it had. Well, this voice actor had a family too, probably.
Probably, and he's a real person. So my heart goes out to him. But at the same time, like, I am glad that they listened to the fans as far as respecting that heritage, too. I can see both sides. So, anyways, we've kind of veered off track here. Yeah. But those were the top Aussie developed games. There are heaps more on the list. But those are the ones that we were like, yeah, those are notable. Those we've loved and still love to play. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure that there'll be more down the road. If there's things that you think we've missed that you know that are Aussie made, let us know at thegaminglovers.com or on social media, on Facebook and Twitter. Hit us up and let us know. Maybe we'll try some Aussie games. Maybe we should have one Aussie game each in our 4 in Feb.
You know how many? I have too many games trying to qualify for this 4 in Feb.
How about you do 5 in Feb?
I did 8 in Feb one year.
See, it's possible.
It's doable.
All you have to do is play Florence and there
8
you
times.
go.
Done.
No, play Florence. Half an hour, you're done. Tick one off. There were things we wanted to mention on this list, but that were like half and half made in Australia, things that we've contributed to, like Deus Ex.
Human Revolution. I was going to say Revelation, but it's Human Revolution.
Human Revolution.
A great game.
So great, but it was like co-made. Mm-hmm. Half made in Australia, half made in Montreal. So Montreal?
Well, tomatoes.
I'm sure that we get offended when people don't say Melbourne correctly.
Melbourne, MELBN.
Montreal, I'm pretty sure.
Montreal.
Half made in Australia, half made in Canada, right?
Yeah, we'll just go with that.
Well, I'm saying Australia, the country. I'm not saying Sydney.
Well, I suppose that's true. And another one that's co-made that we did also fall in love with at the sight of a simple trailer was Muddle Dash. Mm-hmm. A simple 2-man crew, 1 Australian, 1 Scotsman. What a tandem they made of making little octopuses racing for a party. Mm-hmm.
Still love playing that game. So, and I'm sure that there's others out there that are like that Aussies have contributed to that we're just weren't on our list necessarily or on our radar.
We tried to mostly stick with either things that we know are hot at the moment or
So hot right now.
so hot right now. Well, it is in Australia because we're kind of
In
sweating
summer.
our way through summer.
Yep.
But also the games that we have actually played, whether we knew they were Australian made or not at the time that we enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully this list, as you've heard them, maybe you've played some of them or maybe they've intrigued you. Maybe you want to go out and play Golf Story now. Go do it.
Do it.
Do it.
Spend the dollary dues on it.
Oh my word. But seriously, regardless of where games are made, we're just thankful that games exist.
Mhm.
So happy Australia Day, everybody. And I think it's time now for some gaming goals after this.
You're listening to the Gaming Lovers Podcast. Want to join the conversation? Visit thegaminglovers.com. Record your comment or question by clicking on the button on the right-hand side. And you could be featured in the next podcast.
All right. So what are you going to try to squeeze in the last few little bits of January?
Well, there's not much left of it. What am I going to try and do? I definitely do want to know what's at the bottom of that darn sinkhole in the forest. So, provided my good buddy the Falcon and myself can coordinate our hours, it's unlikely. But I want to try and finish that by January.
Mm-hmm.
And by January's end. And I also want to try my best to move along in Yakuza 0. It's probably not going to happen as quickly as I'd hoped, but if I can at least make some progress on that before February steals all of my attention, because I go hard all day, all night in February. When it comes 4 in Feb, it's busy gaming season. Everything else takes a backseat.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a lot going on socially by the end of this thing.
Yes.
The end of this month is busy. We've got our other hobbies sprouting up. The WWE Royal Rumble will take up most of a day.
Mm-hmm. Plus Australia Day celebrations.
We've got a couple other barbecues to make it too. So
Put some snags on the Barbie. Now,
Yeah,
can I just do a side note here?
let's make it clear.
I know people say shrimp on the Barbie thanks to Paul Hogan and that ad that circulated yonks ago.
I have never eaten a shrimp off a barbie.
I know. I don't know many people who do. I mean, people do. It's not like we don't do it. There are some. But the majority of Aussies, when it comes to barbecues, it's more like snags. Which
Snags.
is it's what we call sausages. Snags.
I call them sausages.
Well, I call them snags with some dead horse on it, which
Oh,
is
gosh.
slang for tomato sauce, which is also known as ketchup. You see, we're giving you the Aussie 101 here.
I'm confused, and I'm Australian.
Oh, that's also how it's supposed to be, I guess. But a lot of our slang comes from the Brits.
Fantastic.
Anyways,
Anyway, gaming goals.
my gaming goals for this week.
What do you need to make sure is ticked off before the insanity of 4 in Feb 2019?
I just want to play Mass Effect.
Just relax.
Yes.
Take it easy.
Mm-hmm.
Smooch that Garrus Vicarian.
You know it.
Well, you can't romance him yet.
Why
It's only
not?
Mass Effect 1.
Oh, that's true.
I don't have to feel jealous now.
No, we're just building the solid friendship foundation part. See, that's what I believe. You start off as friends, and then you build deeper relationships. So that's all I'm doing, like laying down the groundwork first. Please stop staring at me like that.
It's getting uncomfortable in here. Anyway, tune in next week for our very special 4 in Feb special edition of Specialness.
Yes.
I said special too many times, so I thought I'd just lean into it. It's going to be special. Talking about our history, what games we have picked in years past, which ones we succeeded in, which years we did not.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to reveal what games you have voted on for us to play in 4 in Feb this year. So please head to social media, vote on Brendo's. He's already given you ones to choose from. Mine is a bit more open-ended because I am stuck. I think I have like 2 games that I'm kind of certain that I'm going to choose. But otherwise, my selection for 4 in Feb is pretty open. So if you have any suggestions of games you would like me to play and beat in the month of February, hit us up at thegaminglovers.com or send us a message on social media, Twitter, on Facebook. Let us know your thoughts. I really need them because I'm like, no clue.
You need a little guidance.
I would love
from
to
the
do something
wise
just
one.
that's a little different, you know, and I'm stuck. I'm not sure what to try and what is beatable amongst other games as well. Like, I want it to be realistic, so I need help. But you guys probably already knew that. Thegaminglovers.com.
Well, for my dear wife, Jem, I have been Brendo, we've been the Gaming Lovers, and we are out of time. So have yourselves a merry little Australia Day, and chowski.
Bye, Nara.
Throw a little chowski on the barbie. Sounds like a food.
Thanks for listening to the Gaming Lovers podcast. For more episodes or to watch some live stream gaming, visit thegaminglovers.com.